What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today's episode we're going to be going over a little intro or idle video. So if we sit on the press any key screen for too long, we're going to trigger a video to play. In this case, we will play a video after 10 seconds of idling on the press any key screen. This just adds a little bit of excitement, a little bit of call to action to the player, so if they step away from their machine for a bit and they come back and they see this, they could be excited to play the game. This is similar to what arcade machines did to draw interest from crowds, and a lot of games still use this tactic today. So going idle in a lot of games will trigger either a movie or trigger a fight between two AI. We don't have AI yet, but I will be showing that as well once we get AI implemented. This is the easier of the two methods where we just have a pre-rendered video that we can add and play at any point. Additionally, we can play whatever sound effects or music we want here too. So we can take clips of gameplay, mash them together, and even if we don't have a edited video with music, we can add music right here, and we'll be good to go. Now you see I still have the text on the screen for the Unreal Engine 4 fighting game template and the press any key that is intended, because it's showing this video, but at any point we can press a button and go to the main menu, and then everything works as normal. So that's pretty much all we're going to do today, guys. It's a pretty simple episode, but it's a really fun one. I always love watching these videos whenever I start playing a new game to kind of get me pumped up to play it. Before we get started, I want to give a huge thank you to my YouTube membership and Patreon members and supporters. I really appreciate you guys always looking out for me and supporting me. And additionally, thank you for giving me great ideas like this one so I can keep working on content that you're excited to see and you're enjoying. If any of you want to get caught up in the series before you watch this episode so you can check out everything we've done, I believe we're on episode 174 of the fighting game tutorial series. So we're quite far along. We still have a really long way to go, but you can get caught up, see how we got to this point. Alternatively, feel free to click this icon in the top right corner right here, which will allow you to see how we implemented our press any key screen, because we're going to be working on that logic today, so you may want to have that before you watch this episode. That way you have everything ready to go, and you don't have to go and backtrack later. With that said, we are ready to get started. So if we close this, we don't need our code today. We can stick to the blueprints because we're only going to need to add our videos and edit some logic on our press any key screen. The first thing we're going to do is make sure we have a video. Now, I already have mine in here, and I've shown how to upload and import videos before, but I will go ahead and show you what my standard video looks like. So I have this idle video here. This is my file media source. So you can see right here is my intro video. It is 28 seconds long, and it is an MP4 file. So remember, when you're adding movies, it is best to add movies to the movies folder of your Unreal project. So here is my Unreal project. I have my content directory, and then I have my movies folder in that. Unreal is specifically set up to use videos in the movies folder. You can technically have them outside the movies folder, but I just recommend putting everything in here because there are a few things that aren't supported and a few things that get more difficult if you have to grab them from other folders. So typically I put all my videos in here. And you've seen this before with my stage intros, with my Twitch trailer that I was using before for the splash screen, and for some of my command list videos as well. So these are for the individual commands. I have videos for them when you're on the menu. All of these are in here. I just have a new one today that is the intro video.mp4. Now you can see it's playing here, and it actually will have some audio on it. Even though the audio that you saw during the actual demo earlier did not have this audio. But this is my video. Doesn't really matter if you watch the whole thing or not, but just so you know what we are working with, this is what I've got. And so once you add a video to this path that I was just showing you, you will automatically get this file that I have here. It is called a file media source. If you do not automatically get it when you add a file to the movies folder, you may get a prompt saying you can import it in the bottom right hand corner. But if you don't get that, then you can manually import the file by selecting import right here, and then selecting the file that you want to add. Once you do import the file, you'll get this file media source, and you can call it whatever you want. I just called it the idle video. Now this file media source basically keeps track of the path and knows what to reference, what file to reference when we want to play it later. But we need a media player to actually display the video to actually play it. We did something similar for the command list and the stage preview, so you might be familiar with this. We're going to go to add new media player. When you make a new media player, it'll ask you to name it. I called it media player idle video. It's not actually required that you have a separate media player. You could use a pre-existing one, but I'm going to use a new one just to make sure we go through the whole process. When you open up the media player, you have a few options in the details panel, such as play on open, which means should we play a video as soon as we open the media player. That is checked by default, and I'm going to leave it checked. Shuffle is to shuffle around the videos, but in this case we don't want that. I have an idle video. If you had multiple videos that you wanted to play on idle, shuffle would be perfect. And loop, of course, just lets the video loop once it completes if we haven't ever exited out or told the media player to stop. I do want to check this one because I want the idle video to keep playing when the player has not pressed an input and actually exited out of the idle video. You actually don't have to do anything else in here, but I do like to double click on my file media source to make sure that the video plays properly. If you see it playing in here, you know you imported your video correctly from before. And you can see that my video plays the whole way through, so it is good to go. Now, after creating the media player, we're actually still not done because we need to put this media player on a widget. And to do that, we're going to need to make it into a texture. So there is something that exists in Unreal. If you go to add new media again, there's a media texture, which will implement the texture asset for rendering video tracks from Media Player assets. That's exactly what we need. We need to play whatever is on the video in that texture. So go ahead and make a media texture, and then I call it MT for media texture, and then underscore the name, which is underscore idle video in this case. When you open it up, you'll have to select the media player that you want to use. I'm going to use my media player idle video. When you do that, you may see this video is actually playing on here already, but it's okay if you don't see that. Media players are a little bit weird in Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine 5, so you might just see a black image, or you might see a tiled image of white and black like a checkerboard. Doesn't really matter. Regardless of what you see, as long as you have this media player in for the media texture, it should be perfectly fine. That is the media texture, which is great that we have that, and we definitely need that, but we need to have an actual texture that we can put on our widget as well. And to do that, we need a standard material. So you can right-click on your media texture, idle video, and then select create material. Once you do this, you'll get your final result, which I've called material underscore idle video, or just M underscore idle video. When you come in here, you want to make sure that your material domain is user interface. It'll actually be surface by default, so it's going to look something like this. But if we have a surface, it's a 3D material. It would work if you were putting this in the scene somewhere, but we actually want to display it on our widget, so we need to make sure it is user interface. And so we can take our material domain here and change it from that to user interface. When we do that, you may break the RGB to final color section here. It doesn't always break. Sometimes it does. I don't exactly know what causes it to break, but if it does break, you can just simply drag it back in. It's not a problem. But make sure that they are connected. If they're not connected, you could run into problems because then nothing will be passed into the material's final color, so you'll just get a black image. You could change other things in here if you wanted, but I don't need to. I'm just taking whatever comes out of the video into this material and saying that is good enough. We can now go to the widget we want to display this video on. And that is my Press Any Key Screen widget. So if we go to this widget, right now I will hide this. This is what you're used to seeing. So we had a background, we had the Unreal Engine 4 fighting game template text, and then we had some Press Any Key text that has an animation that causes it to flicker. So right now you can't see it, but of course you can see it when you play the game, and it's that text down at the bottom there. What I've done is I've added an additional image that is the same size as the background, And it starts as invisible with no video playing. And once the timer runs out, the image becomes visible and the video begins playing. Because I wanted the text to appear in front of that video, I wanted to make sure that the idle video image that we added was at a z-index that was lower than the text on the screen. That way the text rendered on top of it. However, our already existing background image had a z-order of -1, and I don't want these z-orders to be the exact same. I'd rather the background image be all the way in the back and the video that we're going to play when idle to be slightly in front of that. So the first thing I want to do is take my background image and make sure the z-order is at least a -2. Then I want to add another image to the widget that I've called idle video image. And at this point, I want to anchor it and make it the full size of the widget with no offset, so it basically just takes up the whole screen. And I want to set the z-order to -1, which is just 1 in front of the background image. Notice that the text is at z-order 0. So it goes background image, idle video image, and then text in terms of the z-order. So now we can go back to our idle video image, and at this point, it'll just be a blank video or a blank image. But we can go down to our appearance brush and set the image to be the material idle video. And that is this material that we set up just earlier in the episode. So we're actually using that material, which is displaying the video on the widget, and thus when we are on the widget, we can watch this video. I don't change anything else in here, except for the fact that I start it as hidden. Our idle video image starts as hidden. That way it is not over top of the background image initially. But everything else is the same as the default image. Now make sure the image is a variable, because we're going to actually access it in the graph to make sure we can play the video at the appropriate time. We can go into the graph, and here's my event construct. I already had all this logic that you see here, as well as this event down here. So quick refresher, we were setting the correct input mode so we could navigate through the menu, playing the press any key blink animation, and then we were listening for the any key input action, which literally means if any input is pressed, we will call this event. And this event was playing a sound effect, creating the main menu screen, adding the main menu screen to the view, and then removing the press any key screen from the view. Everything that you see after that is new for today's episode. So the first thing we're going to add is something to our event construct. I put it at the very end, and it is a set timer by event node. So set timer by event basically takes in a time, and after a certain amount of time has passed, we call an event. So after 10 seconds have passed, we will call this event unless it has been stopped or invalidated. We only want to stop and invalidate it if the player has left the press any key screen. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But for now, get your set timer by event. For the time, you put any time you want. I'd recommend starting it at something lower, like probably 1 or 2 seconds for testing, and then making it longer later. But that is up to you. So for me, I'm putting 10 seconds at this point. So after 10 seconds of inactivity, we are going to call this event. You can drag off the event delegate of the set timer by event and type add custom event. Then you can name this event to whatever it is, and I called mine play intro video. There are some other options you have in set timer by event, but I don't need them. And I didn't have it looping because I don't need the timer to keep looping. We're going to have the video loop, so once the video starts playing, it's going to continue to loop until the player presses anything. Once this event gets called, that is when we want to actually play our video. And to do this, there's a very easy way. We can make a variable that keeps track of our media player. So if you make a new variable, I called mine idle video media player. And the variable type is literally just media player. And I made it an object reference. Once you compile after making your variable, you will be able to select a default value. And we're going to set our media player idle video. So whatever this media player is playing is the source we want to open. So we grab our new variable and call it open source. For the media source, we can select our idle video. And so essentially, this media player is going to play this media source. In other words, this media player is going to play this media source. This is what it looks like visually. Media player playing the media source, but instead of manually clicking on it and choosing that, we're just telling the media player to play this media source. Once we do that, the video will begin playing, and at this point, we should make sure that our actual image that can be shown to the user is visible. So we want to grab our idle video image that we made a variable, get it, and we want to set the visibility on it to be visible. No longer hidden, it is now visible so the player can see it. Now, by default, these videos are not going to have sound, even though the video itself has sound. When it becomes a texture, it does not have sound. If you want the exact sound from the video, I recommend extracting the audio from the video, importing it separately into Unreal, and playing it here. I did not need that. I actually wanted to play music over the generic sound effects that were in the game, so this works out for me, but you have the ability to do that if you want to. Otherwise, we can simply create a sound now and play it. So I want to call it create sound 2D, and I want to select my sound asset. Now, I have a bunch in here from free assets from the Epic Marketplace, but you can pick any sound. For me, I picked this magical fantasy sound. Now, the reason I don't just call play sound 2D here and instead I create it is because if the user presses a button, we want to stop the sound and destroy the audio component. So dragging off of the create sound 2D, I'm going to call the play node. And I'm going to leave the start time as 0 so it just plays from the beginning. At this point, the play intro video event is complete and the event construct is fully updated. There's one other thing we need to adjust, and that is our enter main menu event. So in listen for input action, this is where if any key was pressed, we went and we did this logic, where we created the main menu and removed the press any key screen. We want to do a few more things now. The first thing we want to do is stop the timer from firing, because if we have entered the main menu, we no longer want to be able to play this video anymore or try to play the video. And so if you drag off the return value here from set timer by event, this is the timer handle. And we've messed with a lot of timer handles in code, so you're probably pretty familiar with that. You can drag off and type clear and invalidate timer by handle. And you'll get this node here. And what this does is stop the timer from going. It will reset the time, and then it will not be counting time anymore. It won't be waiting for 10 seconds. So basically just reset it to the default state. That's what we want. That way the timer won't fire anymore. So we're good there. We know once we've exited this menu, don't worry about that timer anymore. But additionally, we also want to stop any sounds that have been created. So we want to make sure this sound is valid before we do anything with it, because remember, if the user comes in and immediately presses a button, they haven't waited the 10 seconds. Thus, the play intro video event hasn't been opened, and thus the sound effect has not been created. So only if it's valid do we want to do these next two things. If it's not valid, we just ignore it. So I drag off the return value from the create sound 2D, and I just check if it's valid. The question mark one here is the one we want because that is the simpler of the two for this case. And now I have some reroute nodes, but essentially I'm using the create sound 2D return value for all of these nodes, for the is valid, the stop, and the destroy component. So if it is valid, we want to stop the audio. The first thing we want to do is not listen to the audio anymore. We don't want it to still be playing. We don't want that to be overlapping with our other menu music. So we can drag off of the create sound 2D and call stop. The other thing we want to do is make sure that we destroy this component. It's just better for memory. We can get rid of this and not have to worry about it since we don't need that sound component anymore. So dragging off create sound 2D one more time, we can call it destroy component. and then we link them all up like this, so we stop the sound and we destroy it. Alright guys, and at that point we are good to go. At any point you can come into your game, idle for a few seconds, and it will go into that idle video to attract people to play your game, or just to have something playing while the players sit on the press any key screen. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it taught you what you need to know to get this working in your game. If it did, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do. I just really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon members again. Thank you guys for all the love and support, and for the great ideas to keep making videos on. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. There's a link in the description, and I'd be very happy to help you. Anyway guys, like I said, that's all I got, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.